Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jessica Reynolds. I'm the Director of the Office of Downtown Development with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. And today we're here to talk to you about our brand new monthly reporting system. If you guys are familiar with FormStack, we're still using FormStack. We haven't switched away from that. But we are making some updates and changes, and hopefully after we go through them today, you guys are as excited about them as I am. And so I feel like I have to kind of going to give you a little context as to how we got to this point. First off, kudos to Tess. If you have not checked out our brand new website update, that's what you're looking at right now. So if you go to georgiamainstreet.org, you'll see our updated website. It's got cool little interactive features, still got the Main Street of the month. All the same information is there, it's just packaged a little bit more nicely. So just got to show that off, and I know she's put a lot of time and effort and energy into it. So if you hadn't had a chance to check it out, you'll get to see it today. Secondly, how did this whole process evolve? Well, let me say this, that for the past 3 years, probably every time that January comes around and I go through everybody's monthly reports and put together y'all's summary impact reports, I look at what you guys are reporting, and I would say for the most part, I'm just like, ugh, because data is wrong, or things are in the wrong place, or it's obvious that what we're looking for is not being communicated effectively, or the information that we're trying to get from you is missed, and then we have to do a ton of follow-ups, right? So, hey, I'm missing this, or hey, you did this, but you didn't plug this in. And again, after several years of me quietly complaining to myself and maybe Elizabeth every springish, I decided after going through this year's stuff that we had to make a change. And y'all know that I don't like making changes just to make changes. So if we're going to do something, we're going to do it, and it's going to be better than what it was before. And so when we were looking at how do we remake this monthly reporting system, I looked at a couple things. First is the areas that we were struggling to get accurate information in, right? Meaning the areas that I need information, but that you guys may not be giving us exactly what we need. Because again, I feel like that's not just on you, it's also on us and how we teach it and how we ask our questions, right? So that was one thing that we did, looked at everything comprehensively. The second thing we did is that sorry, I saw Colleen threw a question in there, and it distracted me. Colleen, if people throw stuff in the chat, everybody should be able to see it. But if anybody throws anything in questions, I think I'll just be the only one to see it. But you guys can interact with each other, I believe, in the chat section. Okay, refocused. The other thing is that what we did is we went back to the data that the National Main Street Center is collecting from us. And so the way it works is you guys give us data, we have to put it all together, and then we have to turn in that data to the National Main Street Center. And so just like how our kind of process has evolved, their process has evolved, obviously, over the past 40 years. And one of the things we went back to this year, obviously, looking at the stuff that is being collected by us from you guys, and then looking at what we actually have to turn in and submit to national, and seeing what aligned, what no longer aligned, what was still useful even if they weren't asking for it, what stuff was maybe not relevant, we're not using the data, so why are we collecting the data? And again, kind of reevaluating each and every individual section and area that we were collecting data and information. Again, I think, the idea is that if we're going to do something, let's do it better. Let's make it easier. Let's make it more user-friendly, and kind of go from there. So I am going to, today we'll walk you through the system. allow y'all to throw questions at me if you have questions, and kind of, tell you again what we're looking for, and talk you through some of the decisions we've made as far as why, if something's added, it's been added, and if something is no longer there, why it's gone. I will say that this is the longer version of the monthly reporting training. I have already pre-recorded a shorter version that really, isn't getting into depth, isn't getting into all the details, is just teaching you how to do it. And it is already up on our YouTube channel. So, that's one of those things, if you don't want to hang out here today and listen to all of it, it is already available to go check out, but I would encourage everybody to view some format of this because, again, we are kind of changing the game. So you'll access the system the same way you have before. Go to our website, georgiamainstreet.org, and up here in the top right-hand corner is that little monthly reporting button. You're going to click on that, and you will see this pop up. I'm going to try and close this little dashboard so I can focus on everything. And so monthly reporting system looks the same at the beginning as it did previously. None of that has changed. You don't need a special access code. You don't need a password. You don't need anything different that way. How you access the system is the same as it has previously been. So this top part should look very, very familiar to you. You'll come in, you'll select your community. Just for demonstration purposes today, I'm going to say that I'm Americus. And you're going to select your designation level. Again, this is something you should know. And you're going to select the month of your report. So for anybody who is a new manager who may not have done this before, because I know we do have a few on the call, we're always reporting behind. So we can't report on something that hasn't happened yet. So January's report is due by the last day of February. February's report's due by the last day of March. So on and so on. March, last day of April, April, last day of May. The only one that is different is the December report, because we ask that everything, including your annual assessment and your monthly report, is turned in by January 15th. And that is so we can put all that data together to give it back to you, but also we're getting everything in for the annual assessment process. I have completed all the summary impact reports for 2021, and they have been uploaded to everybody's Dropbox. I sent out an email last week, but if you missed it, or it hit your junk box, if you go into your 2021 folder in Dropbox, you will see your summary report in there. If for some reason it's not in there, reach out to me. There might be something missing or a reason why we didn't complete it for you. Okay, so you'll select the month that you are reporting for, not the month you're in. So again, if I'm in the month of February, I'm reporting on January, that's the month I'm going to select, January, because that's where the report is targeting, the month of January. You're going to select your region. K1, forgive me, I should know which region Americus is in, but I'm off the top of my head, I'm like, ooh, maybe it's region 10 or 8, I don't remember. There's a lot of communities in a lot of different regions. If you are like me and having a Space Cadet moment right now and you can't remember, you can always email our team. Once you know your region, it will not change. It'll always stay the same. You can just select that. Again, then you go to community population, figure out where your community falls, select that. Person reporting, I'm gonna, say myself. And this is sorry, I'm typing this in so you don't see all that other stuff pop up. Okay, so person reporting, that's the person who's actually completing the report. This may not be the Main Street manager, which is why we want you to put who is actually completing the report, because I want to know who's doing it. It's not necessarily who the manager is. It's just who's actually submitting the report. And then second, we've got a copy of this report is emailed to. And again, for you guys who have been doing this with us for a while, this section has not changed. It's still the same. But after you have gone through and completed the entire report, we email you a copy so you can keep track of it and put it in your records. I know Elizabeth always recommends to throw it in your Dropbox folder, so that way you can track it and you just have a copy of it. And you know, it's just makes it a little bit easier on you guys and us if you're, you know, thinking, oh, I want to put my numbers together for myself, or did I submit that? You know, what did I do? You'll always be able to find it then. And hold on one second, Elizabeth, I'm adding you as a presenter. And that way, if there are questions in the kind of coming up, you'll be able to see them. Did I just lose everybody? Trying to do that. Oh no, change presenter here. Sorry, guys. I was just trying to make Elizabeth a presenter, so if we had questions, she would be able to see them, but I think I kind of maybe messed with the whole process. So again, I'm sorry. I was trying to do too many things at once. We'll continue on. So a copy of this report will get emailed to whatever email address you put in there. So if you're Shannon in Billerica and you are reporting and you want a copy to yourself, then you would put in your email address. But if you're Shannon in Billerica and you want to make sure that Janet Chumley sees a copy of this, then you would put in Janet's email address. Again, just remembering that whoever you plug in here, this is where it's going to go to. All right. This is one of the bigger changes that we've seen. So you used to come down here and the next section would be, well, there was a couple things. One would be, we asked you, did you do any training this month? And then the second was, did you have a board meeting? Again, we took that out. We should see the training list of training and information of training you participated in your annual assessment report. So we feel like it's unnecessary to see it right here. And again, with the board meetings and the board minutes and stuff like that, we're going to see that as part of your annual assessment process. So we felt like it wasn't necessary to capture that information here. Full disclosure for people who have been with us long term, you'll remember there was several years back, we kind of switched up the annual assessment and monthly reporting process to put them all together. That sunk like a lead balloon. But that is where that component originally came from. And in the reevaluation process, we removed that. So you will not see those questions anymore. That's okay. We know that they will be accounted for in the annual assessments. We're cool. We're going to move on. Then you would have seen the section that talks about program income and program expenditures. This was one of the sections that was most often confused and complicated and convoluted and also misreported. So let me tell you first what we're trying to get to, and then I'll tell you about how we've changed that process. So when we are looking to report this data to the National Main Street Center, what they're looking for is they want us to capture the total economic impact of everything that is happening downtown. And that means the amount of investment that is being put into the program, those things like staffing, travel, training, office space, things like that, as well as project-based stuff, events, execution of things. So when we were asking about the program income and expenses, we were trying to look at that from like an operational perspective. And sometimes I will say my GEMS communities, y'all are awesome. You guys were typically the ones reporting this correctly. And a lot of times our other communities, I would see a bigger community that would report a really low number, and I would know that your salary wasn't in there, or I would know that there's no way you're operating a program on this small amount of money. So we're not looking at things comprehensively. So this next question has been changed to try and address that. So here we are looking at your program's operations, what it actually costs you every single month to operate your program. And that is everything from staff and salary and benefits to what you're paying for an office space, any technology costs. Again, if you have a budget or line items for travel and training, anything that is spent to operationally support the Main Street program. And we want to account for it in this section. So we're no longer asking about, you know, income and how much money your program is bringing in here. We're really focusing on just expenditures. So how much money is being invested and spent here on the operations of your program. So for example, you're Kayla, you're in Stone Mountain, and you've got you know, a city budget and a DDA budget. You know, that's, again, you have to, I want to look at all sources, all funding sources here, but I want to see, I only want to count for stuff that's actually making your program operate. Things like projects and, you know, streetscapes and beautifications and public improvements and building rehabs, all that's going to be addressed later. We're purely just looking at from an operational standpoint. And so let's say, just to make it easy numbers wise, you work for the city, you're a city employee, and you have a city budget, you have your own line item. And every year the city allocates $120,000 to your program, and you spend that every year to operate your program. And that, again, that may be for travel, training, office space, all those things. You could easily just take that $120,000, divide it up by 12, and then each month put in $10,000 here. If you have multiple budgets and multiple revenue streams that are contributing, I'm thinking of like Ondi in Rome, where you have a business improvement district, and you may have you know, or in LaGrange, where you may have building rentals, different revenue streams that are coming in. We want to know, again, what is the total dollar amount being spent on your program's operational expenses. So nothing like crazy above and beyond, none of those special projects that you're doing that money is going towards, just how much money is going into operating the program. And so you're going to put that here for that month. I'm just going to say, you know, for numbers purposes, $10,000, and then you can click. A couple little things to keep in mind. It does not add the comma. I'm sorry, I wish it did. It doesn't. It's let's take that out. It's really annoying that it doesn't. One of the things that I always recommend is that maybe if you have a number and you want to put it in there, you type it out somewhere else, and then paste it into here, so that way you make sure you're not adding an extra zero or leaving a zero off. The other thing I like to do, just personally, I'll put the little kind of like bar in there, and I'll move it over with my either my cursor or my mouse or the little arrow keys, and I just do that so I can make sure, oh yeah, that's where my comma would go, that's $10,000. Okay, I put in the right amount. So this is where that dollar amount, the amount that's being invested in making your program happen each month. And then the next section is, where is this money coming from? So if you're, again, Ondi in Rome, you may be selecting the city's general fund, you may be putting the business improvement district, you may have a little bit of membership money coming in, you may have building rentals, you know, whatever this money that supports you monthly is coming from, that's, you know, what you're going to click. We have other communities, it may just be 100% city general funds, you may be city and county. Again, you know, this really just depends on your program's makeup. So I can't answer that for you, only you're going to know that yourself. But the reason I've added this section where I say, where are all these funding sources that it contributed to it, is because I want you to think about Main Street in a broader perspective. I don't want you to just think about Main Street from, you know, like the city supporting you. I want you to think about all these different revenue streams that are coming together to help support your program. And let's say, you know, you're the city of Carrollton and you don't have a specific line item for just, you know, Carrollton Main Street. Let's say you're under, you know, the community development department or something. I don't want everything for community development. I want to know what's your piece of the pie. What's the downtown's piece of the pie? What's the Main Street program's piece of the pie? Because if you throw in here something like $50,000 a month, I'm going to know, that's probably not right. I would love it, but it's probably not right. You know, again, and we're looking at, I don't need to know necessarily the entire budget of the entire department. I want to look at what is going towards downtown, what is going towards Main Street. I'm going to check the questions just to make sure before we move on if there's anything that's coming up. All right, good question, Kayla. If you've got money coming in and you have an IGA, intergovernmental agreement with the city, and the city is allocating X amount of dollars every quarter, is that money that is allocated to the DDA from the general fund of the city? Would I select DDA or would I select city general fund? I would say both. Again, this is the section where there really isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just us trying to see where support's coming from. So, you know, if the city's just, you know, like you said, making a quarterly allocation to the DDA, I think I would still include and select the city's general funds, but I would also check DDA because there's probably money that you guys are doing through other things that's going to go support that as well. So I would select both if it was me. Oh, good question, Carly. So would you prefer the number to be the same each month or should we use the actual number? I would prefer your actual number. So, you know, again, some people may only have one budget and they're on a very tight budget and they know that this is all I have for the entire year and we can't go over it because we financially are not in a position to go over it. And so, you know, I think that's one of those situations that just depends on you. But, you know, so that's where you could do the whole, take your whole year divided by 12 and put a number in here. But honestly, I would prefer, you know, to have the actual number each month because in theory, you know, things could change and vary from there. You could have more membership. If you have a membership program, you could have one month where you have a lot more membership income coming in. You know, you could have another month where, you know, I'm trying to think, you know, you've got a grant that's come in to help you fund something. You know, again, I want to see kind of what's happening in real time. But if you have any like more individual questions like that regarding y'all's programs, you know, the entire team is here to kind of help guide you through that process. We got a question, would this include expenses of the DDA as well? The Main Street program is funded directly from the general funds, but the board, the DDA has other expenses. Yes, so the idea is that we're looking at all the revenue streams. So all the opportunities to bring in money to help support the operational expenses. So if DDA is contributing money to that, whether it's, you know, it may not be, the city may be paying, you know, salaries and stuff like that, but the DDA may be contributing money for travel and training. Again, so you may not have all your money coming in from one place. And so my thing is I want to challenge you guys to look at the picture holistically to figure out all the areas in which the money is coming to financially support the operations of your program. Again, things like events and projects and stuff like that's going to be a whole different section. Yeah, Emily, I'll make a note of that. So Emily suggested that we add private donations to a list of funding sources, and I think that makes great sense. So yes, I will add that. And if you guys, again, see anything else like that where you know that you take a lot of money in from a certain source and it's not listed here, but it's something you would want to check regularly, like check that box regularly, let me know and I can make sure to add it for you. So yes, Emily, I will add that private donations section. All right. If everybody's good, then I'm going to move on to the next section. I don't see any more questions. Oh, SPLOS funds. Yep, good one. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Abby. All right. I'm going to add SPLOS as well. Okay. So Then the next section will be events and volunteers. And one of the things I kind of want to show y'all is that if you were to, I'm going to say mind the scroll because I don't want anybody to get like motion sickness, but if you're to scroll down and look at the rest of the monthly reporting, that's where it stops, right? And you're like, oh my God, where did everything go? Like I said, I tried to make it as consolidated and clean cut for you guys as possible. So we're using a lot of conditional logic. And if you guys have never built forms before, conditional logic means that if I select this condition, this happens. So for example, here in events and volunteers, if you were to say yes, you'll have a series of questions and follow-ups that pop up. If you say no, then you just move on to the next section. And again, I tried to do this so that way all the excess sections that you have to plug and play data into really don't exist unless you actually had something that happened that month. Again, just trying to make it as clean for you as possible, as clear cut for you as possible. One of the other sections that changed as far as the data that we're collecting is in the event section. So down here with the programs, projects, and expenses, which I will get to, honestly, guys, it's all the same stuff that we've been collecting from you. The real estate stuff, you know, you'll see job creation, all those things, that's really the same. It's just the only difference is how we've kind of organized it. The events and volunteers section, though, has changed. And one of the biggest reasons for that is that the National Main Street Center is no longer tracking that data. And so there's a couple little considerations we had to take in here. So the first consideration is that we wanted to make sure that if money from the Main Street program was being invested into events that you were doing, that we were tracking that. So, you know, we kind of had the debate, do we have events in here or not if the national program isn't tracking them? And the discussion ended up, well, we have to make sure we're accounting for it because we do know that Main Street programs are investing funds, whether that's sponsorship dollars or money that they've raised, or, you know, like Emily was saying before, private donations. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for that financial investment into events. And, you know, again, people maybe, you know, making money that's then the next year invested into it. So it all kind of is circular, and what goes around comes around. So if you had an event going on during your downtown period, the next question would be, were any of these events funded through or by the Main Street program? So again, you're going to see this as a little bit of a change from what we've previously done, because before we used to say, hey guys, look at this more comprehensively. I want to look at all the events. Here I'm saying, I just want to know what Main Street's involved in. I want to know if Main Street is connected to this, if Main Street is funding it, is sponsoring it. If you say yes, then I want to know what the total cumulative expenditures for these events are, including advertising. Again, so that's going to go back to the budget you're keeping and tracking for this event, and I want to see whatever that number is. If you have multiple events, then put the total for all of them in here. Again, I'm really just looking at whatever that total impact is financially. So for me and our data, it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily need to know how many and what they were and all that kind of stuff, but it's me looking and needing the total financial impact, because that's going to impact the bottom line and those numbers that I give you guys at the end of the year. The other thing I will say is that if you go through this series and you select these things, one of the things that will pop up is this section here that says optional reporting. And we had a debate about this in the office, and we ended up adding this section that's optional because we realized that you may be like Tara, and you may want to track this data because you understand the value of being able to communicate that to elected officials, right? That to be able to say, hey, there's this many things happening downtown, and this is how many people were engaging, and you understand the value of that as part of a conversation, so you want to keep tracking it. Or you could be the Jessica, and you're like, this is frustrating because we have so many things going on. I feel like I'm never really giving you an accurate number, and I hate that I'm always doing an estimated attendance because I feel like, again, this is just a best guess. So the frustration comes from not necessarily being able to report as accurately as you want. So again, this is an optional section. If you want to keep reporting that data as far as how many events happened holistically in the downtown, you can enter that information. And then you can also enter the attendance estimates for all those events together. And I've added a section here, Main Street Manager's notes for events specifically. So you could say what events you were tracking and anything else that you would like to just make note of, and you know, and keep in mind. I had a question that someone asked about in-kind donations. I didn't add that to the funding sources because in-kind is, while it's nice and I like it, and you would have to estimate what that in-kind donation is, and I'm actually looking for what's the current dollar amount, not just the value. So that's why I didn't add it, and that's why we didn't include it. Again, so that optional section, again, it's up to you guys to decide if you want to keep doing that. And what I will say is, to the programs that do keep doing it, you will still see it reflected as part of your end of the year report. So that's my promise to you. If you keep doing it and you keep collecting that data and you keep inputting that data, then I will make sure that you receive that data back at the end of the year as part of your report. And then again, one of the things that National is still tracking is volunteer hours, because they want to see what that total impact is. And so volunteer hours, but specifically around the Main Street program, is what they're looking for. So that means volunteers is anybody who's not getting paid who is helping you. So if a board member shows up to help with a program or a project, that's a volunteer hour. Board members that show up for board meetings or committee meetings, those are volunteer hours. If Main Street is putting on an event or sponsoring something, that is, those would have volunteer hours. But I really want to keep the focus to stuff that the Main Street program is doing. Again, if Main Street's having a let's go pick up trash day and you've got 15 people that show up, if you're doing a community service event, whatever it is, Thomasville, and you're doing your what is it, Victorian Christmas at the end of the year, and you've got volunteers helping you, yes. Again, trying to track those numbers, but we're not looking at it previously through the lens of everybody and everything. This is really just about what is impacting the local Main Street program. And remember, guys, when I say Main Street, if your DDA is serving as your Main Street board, then yes, you're looking at it all one and the same. Main Street is that organizational umbrella, but you may be under a chamber, like down in Douglas, Georgia. You may be an independent 501c6. You may may have a C6 like in Fayetteville or Blackshear. You may be a 501c3. You may just be completely city funded. Again, when I say Main Street, I'm just talking about that holistically. All right, any questions about events or volunteers before we move on? All right. Michelle, I saw your question about office space in City Hall. Unless the city is actually like charging you for office space, I would not say you need to include a dollar amount for that. And I know that some people are like, why would the city charge you? So perfect example is at the state. Our agency has a building, and every office in the building, whether it's a cubicle or like my office, there is rent attached to it, right? So I have to pay in my budget at the state level so much for office space, and that is part of my budget that's allocated. But if you don't have something like that, if your city is not set up that way, I don't want you to make up something. It's okay. There are situations, like I think about when I was in Carrollton, where we had office space in the downtown. That was like a rented out space. It was not City Hall. We actually had, store frontage where, we were occupying it. So if you're in a situation like that, that's where I want to count for office space. But if there is no direct cost to you in your program because you're occupying something at City Hall, that's okay. Again, it just depends on your situation. All right, next we're going to move on, if I don't have any more questions about events, to job creation. Again, you'll see here, did any of the following occur? Businesses opening, businesses closing, business expansion. So you will select any or all that apply. Let's say you had a really busy month and all those things happened, then you're going to see those sections pop up and populate below. You'll see business openings, business closings, and then business expansions. But if you only had a business opening and you only selected that, that would be the only thing you would see here pop up. And again, we're trying to track this data, but keep it as simple as possible. So how many new businesses opened? You would put how many, and then how many new jobs came from that. And then I always recommend, listing the name of that business here. So that way, you're 2 months down the road and you're like, man, that ice cream shop opened. Did I track them on my monthly reporting? You can go back and see, yes, I reported this many jobs, and this is when they opened, and I put it in my January report. Couple things to note here. If you check one of these boxes, a business opening, a business closing, or a business expansion, there must be a job gained or a job loss attached to it. So that means you only select these if it is a job is attached to it. So a business is not expanding if they're not adding jobs, right? So if you have a business opening, I want to know if there's one business opening, there is at least one job created there. If a business is closing, there is at least one job lost there. And if a business is expanding, there needs to be at least one expansion. So you will only, check these if you've had these happen. If not, you will move on to the next section. And again, it's all about just keeping track of the businesses that are listed. And again, everything is reported as a whole number. So it's not 2.5 jobs, this is not like, 2 parents and 2.5 kids. I mean, we're whole people, whole numbers, right? Okay. All right, then this next section is that part where I said everything is still there. It's just kind of organized a little bit differently. So it's programs, projects, and expenses. And one of the things that we did to try and do this a little bit differently is put them all in this section. And so the idea is that if any of these things have happened in your downtown district during that reporting period, you would check a box. And the reason I want you to think about it as in, did it happen in your downtown district versus did Main Street do it, is because I know that these things can happen, but it's not always funded by the DDA or the Main Street program. And then some people aren't including it in the reports, but it's a huge investment that is happening in your community, and we need to track that. So again, National wants us to think about everything that is impacting us. So if you have somebody who is investing in fixing up their building, even if Main Street's not putting a facade grant into it, or even if Main Street's not financially tied into it any way, shape, or form, still want to track that impact, whether it's on the inside of the building or the outside of the building. So the way I want you to approach this section is each month you go into this section and you think, okay, did any of these things happen? And you're like, okay, did we have any commercial properties that were, sold, residential properties that were sold? Did any public improvement projects happen? And that may be something from an amphitheater to a new banner, right? Did we have any streetscape or beautification projects happen? Did we have any rehabs or new construction? And you'll see here that we split them up into these different categories because I wanted to be able to look at it, are we talking about commercial, residential, or mixed use? And we haven't made those, denoted those differences before. And so again, we're trying to help you guys think that more holistic picture. Ooh, good question, Christian. Going back to the idea of jobs, does job constitute 40 hours or do part-time jobs count as one job too? For example, a new business opens with 2 part-time jobs. Is that 2 jobs? Yes. So we are looking at it from the perspective of, was a job created, even if it's part-time or full-time, just job creation. So going back here, if you know, whatever you select is what will pop up. If you are super busy and had an amazing month and you need to check them all, then every single thing will pop up. So what I'm going to do is just walk you briefly through each of these, each of the things, but you'll see that when you select it, there's not a ton that has to go with it. It's just really nitty gritty down to the basics. So for example, still tracking that real estate. How many commercial properties were sold? What was the total value of the sale? And again, a section where you can make a note about it. And then we go to residential, same exact thing. How many properties were sold? Total value of the sales or the properties, and then manager notes section. So that kind of like structure is what you will see for all of them. So while it seems like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of data, it really isn't. We're really just trying to hit the how many and what was the impact. I will say the only caveat about this, and what I did this intentionally, is that I know that you guys are going to be like, a public improvement project or a streetscape project or a beautification project. Like, how do I know the difference? It's all the same. Here's what I did for you. I actually have all the data going to the same section, because what I was realizing when I was looking at people's reporting is that people were not looking at public improvement projects broadly enough, and they were leaving out things and not sure where to put them. And so one of the things I did is I broke them out here as two separate sections that you can individually check, but all of it goes to the same section. So if you only checked public improvement projects, that section's still going to pop up. And if you only checked streetscape, it's still going to pop up. Either way, it's kind of like all roads lead you to the wizard, you know, like everything's getting you to this point. So here, again, I just want you to look at it holistically. How many projects, streetscapes, or beautification projects were completed? And I'm looking at like the overall number, right? So like how many of these were done? If you order 12 banners, you don't have to necessarily put 12 down. It was one project, right? You ordered, you know, made one order for 12 banners. That's one project. The biggest thing here, guys, isn't necessarily the number of improvement projects, it's the value. So how much is being invested in it? So that's really the number that is, I would say, the most critical. It's like, you know, saying how many events or projects have happened is important, but the real critical component is, what was that total amount invested? And again, you've got a section here where you can keep track of your notes. So you could say, you know, I said I had 3, you know, projects, and these were the projects that I am including and listing. Again, so you can make sure that you're tracking what's happening and when it's happening. For building rehabs, again, I want you to think of things happening both inside and outside. Things that Main Street is helping to support financially, maybe you know, with the facade grant or some kind of a boost program or something like that, but also things that Main Street may not financially have any ties to. So if you have, you know, Joe Smith over here, and he's got a jewelry store downtown, and he's fixing up the outside, but he didn't apply for a facade grant, I want to make sure we're still capturing that information, that data. And the only difference here is that we're just asking you to kind of categorize it. Was that rehab commercial? Was it housing or residential, or was it mixed use? And for any of our newbies who aren't necessarily sure, mixed use means you've got residential and commercial included. So I'll get to your question in a second, Natalie. So if you were here and you had a commercial property that was rehabbed, you know, again, you would put, you know, 1, and let's say the owner put, you know, $15,000 into it, you know, I'm going to put that on there. Remember, I'm going to do my little trick and be like 1, hold on, 1, 2, 3. Oh, yep, see, I did too many, so I'm going to take a up there. That looks a lot better. That's 15,000. You know, and then you're going to list whatever that project is. If you have multiple ones, you know, you can go up, you can go down, and then I want to see what the total impact is for all of those projects, commercial. And then same thing's going to pop up for housing, residential. How, you know, how many projects? What was the total investment? And you know, your notes to yourself there. Again, I'm looking at like projects overall. And then, like I said, we added that mixed use section, number of projects, total investment. Again, the biggest thing here is about the investment component. And so that's what I'm trying to drive home, is that we really just want to make sure we're capturing that amount of that data of the amount of money that's being invested, whether it's privately funded, publicly funded, whether it's coming from the city or the DDA or private entities. That's okay. It's not necessarily about where the money's coming from, it's just tracking it. And I will say too that I know not everybody's comfortable having those conversations. Not everybody will tell you how much they've invested, but there's some cool tips and tricks I can talk to you about at the end if you need help capturing some of that information and data. And Tanya said, what about interior renovations? Yes, I feel like that's something that previously people only focused on exterior, but yes, interior counts. If someone occupies a building and puts 100 grand into the inside of a building to make it go from being a professional building to a restaurant, we want to capture that money, right? Or capture that impact, because, you know, that's $100,000, even if they don't touch the outside of the building. They may only just put a sign up outside, but everything else happens inside. So we want to make sure we're capturing that. So yes, absolutely. Interior renovations, we want to make sure that we're accounting for. And then with the new construction, same thing, same kind of breakdown. We've got commercial, housing, and residential, and then mixed use. The same thing will happen when you select those two. How many new projects and what was the total investment? Here, you know, the only difference is I'm just trying to see whether it was, you know, what kind of a project was. Was it a commercial project? Was it a residential project? Was it a mixed use? But the biggest thing here is the investment, the amount being invested. And then somebody had, Natalie, I saw you had a question. Can you give an example of public improvements that might be being left off? Sure. Let me see. The reason I added the kind of streetscape beautification section is because I feel like sometimes we don't think about the things that make stuff pretty, right? That we're not always thinking about, oh, we worked with this group and they did a bunch of planters, or we did hanging plants, or, you know, we installed lighting, or, you know, I'm not saying Griffin did this, but they installed, you know, a sound speaker system, you know, throughout the downtown. That would be what I would consider a public improvement project. Something that is, and the way to think about it is, it's an improvement in the downtown that is traditionally publicly funded in some source, right? It's for everybody, and it's not funded traditionally through private entities, right? So in a situation like that, yeah, we would, Griffin did this great thing. We want to make sure we're capturing that. Again, if you have any questions about it, you always feel free to reach out to us. Another question about capturing impact. What about updates to buildings like painting, lighting, and flooring? Yes, absolutely, all of it. If they're touching something on the building and they're spending hard-earned money, I want to know about it, because that is an impact that is happening in your downtown, and we want to make sure we're capturing that. Oh, I got more questions. Okay. I would list an apartment complex as residential. If it's an apartment complex that also has commercial, that would be a mixed use property. Yes, Michelle, I agree with that. So Michelle pointed out that some people lowball investment numbers so that they have to pay smaller permit fees. It depends on how your city is structured with that. And that's where I would say that relationship building really is important, and is good to know. And that's where also kind of keeping yourself a little bit separate from those entities that have to enforce that. You know, they want to see you as an advocate. And I think it's important for businesses to understand that the data, you know, you submit to us, you know, we're not, you know, again, we're not putting it out there. Nobody sees, you know, the business and how much of that investment. It's all lumped together. And so I think, again, that's where having those conversations and saying, you know, hey, just so you know, I would really love to, you know, this is an incredible investment in the downtown. Could you give me an approximate amount that you've invested into it? I would love to make sure that we're capturing this data to report on our overall impact downtown, but nobody's, you know, other than me, myself as the manager, nobody else is going to know that exact dollar amount, because what we do is we use it for statistical purposes only, and we add it cumulatively with the total impact that other people are putting in as well. So we're not necessarily individually calling you out. Again, it's about being able to have those conversations and talk to people. Yeah, CDBG funds for sewer repairs, something like that, that would definitely be a public improvement project. Absolutely. If it's happening in the downtown district. Yep, I agree, Carly. You know, having those relationships with the city so that you can see what permits are getting pulled, and then you can have conversations. Again, you know, helping the businesses understand that you're an advocate. You know, and I think, you know, you go into it like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This investment's awesome. Like, this is incredible. I want to, you know, this is so valued and so needed. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're recognizing, you know, what you're putting into this. Again, nobody has to know that it's for the brick, you know, but we want to make sure that when we talk about what's happening in downtown in that larger holistic context, that data is being captured. Any other questions about this section before we move on?
Jessica, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the relationship stuff. So that can be on a lot of these different questions. So a lot of times we get the question of how do I know how many jobs a business created, you know, various things. And so sometimes the best way to find information is that relationship and asking the question. Reports can only tell us so much. So I would just make sure to caution everybody that yes, a report is a great place to start, but you might need to ground truth information or dig a little bit deeper if, you know, your particular community doesn't have the report that might tell you some of this information.
Yep, absolutely. That's a very good point. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next section and the last section that we have. So again, you would only select something that's happened. If none of these happen in your reporting period during that month, then you just move on to the next section. Or if you only have one, then you enter that data. If you have two, you enter that, so on and so on, and you just move forward. And then lastly, once you get to this part, you're really at the end. So we talk about Main Street staff. Did you hire any new staff? Yes or no? Again, that conditional logic pops up. Is the new staff full-time or part-time? We like to know that just for our office. Again, National's not tracking that, but that just helps us to know how many people are working in a program. And also a lot of it is just so that way, if, for example, you know, someone new is being hired in a community, you know, Villarica, it's been Janet for a long time, and then she's able to hire some support staff and brings on Shannon. Well, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to both of them. We want to make sure that you guys are on our distribution lists, on our email lists. Again, it's just making sure that we're communicating with you guys effectively. So that's not information that's sent to National. This is just information that we use to make sure that we are including you guys in all forms of communication from our office. So we like to just see their name and their role and their contact information, which really means their email address. If you don't have any that month, again, this is not something that every single month I would assume you have. You can select no. the last section here, if you have new staff, would you like them to receive information about the Georgia Downtown Association? The Georgia Downtown Association is a sister organization that's overseen by Georgia Municipal Association. They help staff it. And so what we do is we keep kind of a running list of managers who check that or staff that checks that, that wants us to pass on their information, and then we share that with them, and they may reach out to you with their newsletter or whatever, you know, their conference or whatever kind of events they're doing. And then lastly, did your program release any staff? You know, if you didn't fire anybody or lose anybody this month, you just say no. If you did, you say yes. We want to know who it is and their contact information. Or no, sorry, the contact information isn't for them. The contact information is who should we be reaching out to until you have the new manager. Yes. So, you know, you're in a community, the manager's leaving. We want to know who they are they leaving, and then again, who's the interim person in the meantime. Again, so that's just so we can follow up with the community and figure out, you know, what are we looking at for hiring, time frame, you know, what can we do to support you during that transition? And then if you have an estimated time of when it should be filled, let us know. If not, it's okay. You can leave it blank if you don't know, you know, that information. And then once you're down at the bottom, you hit next, you're going to sign it, and you're going to move on. And that's it.
Awesome. And Jessica, can I say one thing?
Yep.
So, and for those of you that have run into this before, if you click save and resume later, you will be emailed a link to resume your report. We do not get that link. So if for some reason you click that and then maybe a week later you want to complete it, if you've lost that link, you will have to restart your report because we do not get sent that link. We can't see any information from your report until it is submitted. So that's something that I kind of tell new managers. So just in case, I know a lot of people have kind of reached out in the past for that. So I just kind of wanted to blanket statement that for everybody. If you click that, you're responsible for keeping track of your resume link. If you lose it, you will have to start the report over.
Yeah. Absolutely. We didn't used to have it on there, and that was because of that very reason, but we know that for some people it is helpful to be able to go back to it. But like Elizabeth said, the caveat is you don't if you don't hold on to that link that they send you, we can't access it for you. So you'll just have to resubmit it all again. So thank you, Elizabeth. That's a very good point to make. And then once you've signed it, you're ready to go. You hit submit and you're done. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't check stuff, so it's like freaking out. So hold on, that's the other great thing about this. If you don't enter something that is required, it'll go through and kind of make note of it, and it won't let you submit it without, you know, going back and, you know, making sure that you've plugged and played with everything. Yep, and just so you know that if you do the save and resume, sometimes it may go to your spam folder. Just, you know, just a place to check for it if you weren't able to find it. So I will say that the system is now up and ready. You guys can enter your January reports as of today. Again, if you go to our Georgia Main Street, hold on. YouTube site or YouTube page, which is just YouTube.com/GA main ST. I already have this video uploaded and available for you guys to check out. Again, it's not this video that we just recorded, but the kind of quicker version that was pulled up before. Stop that so it doesn't play. But it's already right here, how to complete your monthly reports. And I put 2022 so that you know it's the newest version of it. So, yep, it's already there and ready to go. And we are working, for those of you who are more visual learners, we will have a PDF document that will walk you through each of the sections and what the expectation is reporting wise. We are finishing that up, and both of those documents will be accessible through, hold on, let me pull, yep, there we go. So you'll actually, if you go to the monthly reporting and click on that, we have included links. So you've got the monthly reporting tutorial and the monthly reporting guide. This guide is the former one right now, but once we've updated it, we will make sure that current guide is linked right there so that you guys can just pull it up. You don't have to dig for it. It's right there. We know that this is a change to how we've done things before, so we're trying to make it you know, as front and center as possible for y'all to access.
And then Jessica, can I mention two things?
Yep.
Sorry, I know I'm like the amorphous voice, so I apologize, guys. Hopefully it's coming through okay. Number one is we say this a lot, but I just want to kind of address it since we have a lot of people on the call, is if you ever do not have a piece of data and you're coming up against the due date for your report, please go ahead and submit your report. A common one is like real estate sales. We would rather you have an on-time report and you get us that data like in a week or 2 weeks when you have it, and let us know when we can update that on the back end of our system, because we just find when managers are waiting on one piece of data, that's when we start getting into habitual late reporting. And so we'd rather you submit your report on time, make a note that you are in need of one element of your reporting, and then send that to us when you have it, and then we'll update it for you and send you an updated report.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and then the other thing, and I don't know if you want to talk to this, Jessica, or if you'd like me to, is your reporting boundaries. We know, especially in some small communities, you know, the boundaries you're utilizing for your main street might be your DDA boundaries or a standalone main street, but especially in smaller communities, sometimes we see that they're an entire city. And so that, you know, sometimes gets a little bit fiddly. I was just recently talking to Tybee Island, and we kind of were, you know, talking about, you know, well, how exactly do you, you know, if we have $300,000 of pool permits being pulled, is that something you want to know? So Jessica, do you want to like kind of talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the reality is we really are trying to capture what's happening within that district, right? That historic commercial district. And so if you're in a situation where your DDA district and your Main Street, or your DDA and Main Street program are the same, but your DDA district is really, really expansive, I think we all typically know what our primary corridor is, right? So we want to make sure that our efforts and energy are concentrated in that traditional historic core. We're not looking for data that's being, you know, collected out on the interstate. You know, we're really just trying to get a feel for what is happening in that traditional downtown environment. And so remember, guys, that every community is gauged against themselves, you know, so you know, the kind of investment and the level investment that's happening in small Blackshear, Georgia is not going to be the same as what's happening in Gainesville, Georgia. You know, it's okay. You guys have completely different sized communities and completely different sized districts and stuff like that. So remember, you know, while we want to make sure that you're reporting, we also want it to be accurate. And so if you have a situation where your district is rather expansive, again, please reach out to us so that way we can work with you, because, for example, the city of Atlanta, they have some neighborhoods that are reporting, and what they have done is gone in and delineated between this is our district as an overall, but then this is our reporting area. And so they've gone in and delineated that just to, again, to clarify that when we report data and statistics, it's coming from this corridor and this primary area, but this is our entire like service region. And so we can help you guys with those conversations or that language if we need to kind of like denote the difference between the two, and make sure that we're capturing accurate data that, again, you know, is truly contributing to the impact of the downtown district. Does that touch on it, Elizabeth?
Yes. And if any, like Jessica said, if you have any questions about, you know, what to include, what not to include, your boundaries, just reach out to our office, and we're happy to kind of help you troubleshoot some of that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say too, when our new staff member comes on, they'll be starting March 1st. You know, this person will be, you know, transitioning the compliance and stuff like that this component out from underneath Elizabeth. And so, like Elizabeth said earlier, we want to make sure that you guys are reporting accurately and on time. That will be a big thing moving forward. You've got to communicate with us, because anybody who is a habitual late comer and not submitting stuff, your program may be in jeopardy of moving down a designation, because it's not fair to other people who are doing what they need to do and submitting it on time, and you know, making sure that they're doing what they, you know, again, what they need to do. So I want to make sure that everybody's living up to that, and that we're holding everybody to the same standard. So this is your kind of heads up, your warning. If you know you've been slacking and you've been pushing the limits, time to change. We've got a new system. Hopefully it's a lot quicker for you guys. Again, it's just about kind of getting in and getting out and making sure we're capturing that impact. But the expectation is that you will submit your report for the previous month by the end of the current month. And obviously things happen, you know, once is a happenstance, kind of, you know, everybody gets a one-time pass. Something happens 2 or 3 times, that's habitual. We want to move away from that. And I would say we don't have a lot of people doing this. We have a few people doing this, but especially bringing on a new staff member whose primary focus will be on compliance, we will be cracking down on it. Elizabeth, I hear
you. Sorry. And just as Jessica said, just communicate with us. You know, if something's going on that, you know, is gonna, you know, that might cause a late report, just communicate with us. If you over communicate, or if you just have a question, never be afraid to ask something. We'd rather you ask the question and learn how to do it correctly versus kind of hobble along and, you know, like in a couple months realize that you need to go back and correct something. Nobody wants to do that. So please reach out and ask questions. And just communicate with us if you know something's going on. You know, if you had a death in the family, or you know, had, you know, tested positive for COVID and you don't have access to your, you know, information in your office. Like, things like that happen. We understand, but please just let us know, and we, you know, can work with you on, you know, helping you out and all that type of stuff. But if you do not communicate with us, we're just going to assume that you're, you know, forgetting about it or falling on your laurels. And so just please communicate.
Yep. And with that being said, I think we're good for today. Please, again, reach out to us at the Main Street at dca.ga.gov if you have any questions, and we will make sure that this recording is posted for y'all to view later. Thank you, guys.